and you grip on and it's wonderful. That is what radial G is. So if you imagine at the edge of the wheel, that's as if a bag of sugar would weigh 55 tonnes.
So it's trying to rip itself apart then, I'm guessing.
Indeed.
Right. So the team look as though they're almost ready now, are they, potentially to get Andy in there? We can see his crash helmet, which by the look of things has got the Union Jack on it, but also has, of course, some of the key wildlife that will be there out in the Kalahari. So there's still this fantastic association between the project, and we can also again get a really good glimpse of that onboard shot that we're going to see. We've got a range of cameras that are on board this car as well, so we're going to be able to see things as well, and look back at some of the replays as well that we see as the car heads down the runway.
Indeed, I mean the beauty of this project, the whole idea of this project is that we can stream both live video and data off the car, and we're trialling some systems here today. And actually running down the runway at Newquay gives us that opportunity. So yes, that there are various camera shots that we'll be collecting and streaming live, but there are also numerous other cameras on the car that we'll collect post-run and be able to share that later.
And looking on the screen now, you've got all of those names down the side of the car, and I think it's worth, again, just confirming this for people that have just joined us on live web stream, is that a lot of these companies are involved with the project, but the fundamental of the project and some of the reasons why they are involved and have their name on the side of the car is because they want to engage and they want this project to inspire the next generation of scientists and engineers that are going to go into their businesses as well, because it's not, its main goal is not going fast, it is inspiring that next generation of young people.
Indeed, and when we started, sort of 8-10 years ago, people go, well, you'll just say that, won't you? But actually, when you look at what the project's done and the inspiration it's having now, I've been introduced to 3 people so far today that actually said, I'm doing engineering because of Bloodhound, or I'm doing science subjects at A-level. The project's now in its 9th, 10th year, and you're actually now to see that group of people, that cohort of people actually find science exciting. And there is no better way in this project. I mean, when we start to see this car run down the runway in a few minutes' time, when we saw it start up for the first time only a week or so ago, the feeling that gives us is amazing.
So we can see that Andy is now not only inside the car, but he's now starting to put the crash helmet on. We've been hearing a little bit of radio traffic between air traffic control in our studio here and the start team. So the start team are in the process now, I suppose, Andy, of beginning to get things going and beginning to do the final checks before the car heads down the runway.
So anyway, they're just getting himself comfy. He's going to be strapping himself in, getting the helmet on, and he's now basically just waiting for clearance from air traffic. That's basically to tell him that the recovery teams are in the right place on the runway. Once they're in the right place on the runway, he'll get the clearance to start the car. So he'll then signal the start team to start.
So we're just hearing that around about 2 minutes time that we will start to begin to hear a little bit more radio traffic. So the comms are coming through. We just can see that Andy is beginning to put on his gloves, and while Andy is starting to do the final sort of checks and balances, just talk us through these final few processes that he'll be going through. So he's now inside the car, he's now got the crash helmet on, so I assume the sort of comms checks that are going on and the final checks that all of his instruments are working.
So he's powering up the electrical systems on the car. He's doing final comms checks with his start team. You can see him just holding the canopy hatch. So once he's in there, he'll signal he's fine for that. He'll put his breathing air on and the radio. He's now signalling for the hatch to go on.
Start team tower recovery are ready.
Recovery radio, that's copied, thank you.
So just confirmation over the radio that the recovery team, I heard recovery there. Now that's the team at the bottom end of the runway, is it not?
So it's basically, there's a receiving team at the end of the runway. So basically the idea is that Andy will drive off the taxiway at the end of the runway.
011, wind is 2 o'clock, 6 knots.
Bloodhound copies, plus 13, 1011 and 2 o'clock at 6 knots. Bloodhound will be ready to start shortly and requesting start clearance.
So that's a sort of weather read back by the sounds of things, and I just heard the word start approved there, so that means the air start now will power up?
Yep, so they've now approved him to signal to the start team to start the air start. So you now see that go through its startup process.
So startup process continuing, and we can hear that. I can hear that in the background. I mean, that absolutely. You said it was a jet engine on its own. You can hear that familiar whirl as it starts to fire up.
It is quite funny. So as it starts up, you then, when we start the EJ200, you almost can't notice any difference. It's quite fantastic.
Now that's noisy. When the car is trying to attempt to go flat out at its ultimate target speed of 1,000 miles per hour, or 1,050 is its peak speed that it's been designed for, I gather. It will be running a jet engine. It will also be running a rocket engine on that occasion. So in terms of decibel level, how much more does that decibel level go up when you run the jet as well as the rocket?
That picture you saw at the rear of the car isn't the place you want to stand. So the jet engine and the rocket, we're talking about 180 to 200 decibel. It is phenomenal. When we did the rocket firing here down at Newquay, and we fired the rocket in the hardened aircraft shelter, that actually set off a load of car alarms. So it's pretty noisy.
And I did hear one statistic, correct me if it's not quite true, that on the day that this car runs, I think we can get some more communications from the car. Hang on.
Roger, stop team, they're on.
So he's now asked for the...
Air on.
So he's now asked for the air to go into the air start turbine, and that will start winding up the EJ200, and you'll start to see a heat haze through the back of the engine.
And I heard a statistic, I don't know whether it's true or not, but when this car runs and looks to try and break the record, it will be the noisiest thing on Earth that day.
I think we looked at it, and the only things that would be noisy would be something like Ariane or SpaceX taking off, or a really big volcano. So it's going to be very noisy.
And looking at the conditions, we mentioned ideal, there's not a lot of movement on the windsock, so we're going to be good to go, surely.
It's perfect conditions for today.
Bloodhound, go ahead. Stand by. Start team with Bloodhound. It's a good start. Clear disconnect. Joe from Bloodhound. Just for info, we had the speed reading initially stuck up around 150. It has now sorted itself out through the start.
So by the sounds of things, just as a very small minor problem with just a speed ring by the sounds of things, which seems to have sorted itself out, and that's what these tests are about, Mark.
This is a prototype vehicle, so what people maybe think this is just a show and tell. No, this is a proper engineering exercise. Seeing Andy going through his checklist, going through all the things he needs to do.
So that final checklist, it sounds as though there was final disconnection there of the chocks, so I think very shortly we will be seeing Andy taxiing down what is Delta runway here at Newquay Airport, called Cornwall Airport, Newquay. Let's listen to Andy Green in the cockpit.
Fire 30.
Bloodhound Tower, approved to drive to the 1-2 threshold via the 30 threshold.
Bloodhound Monitor, we'll be driving initially down the Delta to the 1-2 threshold. We'll call crossing. Start team. Brakes on, shocks away.
That copies.
So the moment's coming, Mark. We are about to see very shortly the car roll out onto the runway for the first time. We heard the communication there. Andy will head down the Delta taxiway and then down towards the 30 threshold, as it's known, which is at the bottom end of the runway. He's going to come from the opposite end, but the 30 threshold is the far end of the runway, where he will cross over the runway to then start taxiing down the opposite side, ready to line up.
Yeah, so what you'll see him sort of disappear down over the slight hill here at Newquay, and then he'll go around the end of the runway and then drive all the way back. You'll see him going down the other end, and then he'll position at the start of the runway, and then he'll get for clearance and he'll go for a run.
This is engine arrow, message over.
So we can see the car taxiing away down the Delta runway. You've been here for the static tests of this car, and for the tie-down test where we physically stop the car rolling but run the engine up. You've been here for the first dynamic tests as well, and what does it mean for you today to be able to do this? You've seen this before, but it's the first time we've done it in front of the public and the world.
I think people are going to know how exciting this is. Even seeing it's like this, this is a fantastic thing that is being put together out of a team in Bristol. So
we will pick up on a little bit more radio traffic that's going on as Andy Green makes his way away from the start area, down the Delta taxiway and on towards the 30 threshold, where he will ask for clearance again to cross that 30 threshold, because of course that is runway approach for any other aircraft, which in theory will not be around here at the Cornwall Airport, Newquay, because they have closed the runway for us for an hour and a half to be able to conduct these two high-powered runs. And let's not forget, this is the public debut of Bloodhound Ssc as it heads down the Delta taxiway on towards the 30 threshold and is very shortly going to conduct a couple of high-speed runs in excess of 200 miles an hour, accelerating at around about 1.5 G as well, Mark, as well. So not sustained for long, but that's still a significant amount of G for a short period.
It makes most cars look pretty shabby, actually. You know, we've been down here before, and this will do 0 to 200 in around about 9 seconds. And so yes, for the first up to 60 to 100 to, you know, just over 100, then, you know, a very fast road car can kind of keep up. But then it just really takes off, literally.
And we can see the enormous crowd heading towards the viewing area. Let's hear some more from the car.
We've arrived in our location and established. Over.
Star copy, thanks.
Crowds pouring out. We were expecting 3,000 to 3,500 here, Mark, and this is just the first of 3 days where we're doing this. We're doing again tomorrow with a different batch, and school children, you know, you could argue the most important audience, 4,000 almost, that are going to be here on Monday. In your wildest imagination, could you, at the very beginning of this project, really perceived how many people it really has captured their imagination?
I approve to cross the 30 threshold.
So that's only just going around the end of the runway, so we'll now start that drive back along the northern taxiway to come back. You asked me what excited me. What's going to excite me actually is seeing other people's reactions. So this is...
Hotel, Roger, once vacated 30 threshold, you approve to drive down the Alpha taxiway to Alpha 2.
So that's only giving permission to go down to the other end of the runway. Yeah, it's people's reactions. So when we saw this car start up a mere 2 weeks ago, and then when we saw it run for the first time, the dynamic tests, I think it's stunning, and it takes my breath away. But actually to be able to share that with the people that are here over these 3 days, and actually to the children that are here, to see their excitement, because I don't think there is anything that you've ever seen before that would pay for what this looks like.
So we can see him heading down the Alpha taxiway now. All of the people here at Cornwall Airport Newquay making their way down towards the viewing area, and you mentioned at sort of the end of the runway it sort of drops away. We can just see the tail fin of the car, which is I think one of the most beautiful things to see on that car. Just tell us about the job of that tail fin. What's the job that does?
So it's very simple. It's to keep the pointy end at the front. It's a bit like a blade you see on the back of a feather on an arrow. What this car's different is that we can't have this car too stable. So one of the things people are asking, what would stop this car from running? A really high side wind, a really high crosswind, and it'd be like a weathercock, and Andy would struggle to steer against it.
This is Thunderbolt. Thunderbolt and Sunbeam will move to the agreed position near the entrance point for Bloodhound, 10 metres or so further forward. Over.
And we can hear the rest of the team there on radio comms as well. So this is not just about Andy, this is just about making sure you've got all of your team positioned in the right places to conduct their duties as we conduct what is a live test run.
So very much. So us being down in Newquay is also to do with testing the car, which is obvious, and testing Andy, but actually to test the team and to train the team. And there are very few opportunities we get to do this, and this is a fantastic opportunity.
And it's to make sure that they all know what their job is, what their remit is on the day, because when you've done that and you've had that opportunity to practice it, then the team sort of clicks, and it needs to, because you need to hit the ground running when you get out there into what are very, very difficult conditions. I think we can hear a little bit more, can we not, from Andy as he begins to head down towards the bottom of Alpha taxiway, where he will then line up at the bottom of runway 12. So he's got to cross the 12 threshold, and that's a curve that will bring him round, and then he needs to line the car up, I'm guessing, on the centre line, because we've heard from you the turning circle on this car is 250 metres, so he won't line up at the bottom of the runway because the turning circle won't allow him to. He has to move up the runway a little bit.
He'll go up the runway a little bit, but then he'll hold and get permission to go, and then he'll put his foot down.
So we ride on board with Wing Commander Andy Green, the only man in the world who has travelled supersonic on land, having set the existing land speed record in Black Rock, Nevada on the 15th of October 1997, 20 years ago, as he now heads onto the 12 threshold and is about to line the car up at the bottom of the runway. So we will hopefully get some final traffic from Andy Green as he begins to line the car up, ready for the first of, let's not forget, 2 runs here at Cornwall Airport Newquay. Beautiful sight, and well, this has been a long time coming, and the car looks absolutely fantastic, Mark.
I mean, I think just looking at that at the moment, the way the weather's picked up during the morning and just got better and better, I think it looks stunning. That's Andy pretty much lined up on the runway.
So the car is in position.
Clear to roll. Wind is 2 o'clock, 5 knots.
So the needle you can see in the middle of Andy's cockpit there, that is his speedo. So you'll see that needle as it accelerates.
So Bloodhound is go. Beautiful sight. You can hear the cheers. I can even hear the cheers and the applause in the background. Wow. I mean, that is quite something, Mark. You know, just a few seconds of reheat on the jet. Flames coming out of the back. That fantastic e-flux out of the back. And Bloodhound Ssc has accelerated from 0 to 200 miles an hour in 8 seconds. And as we said, 1.5 G.
I mean, it is. I still get goosebumps when I see that, and I've seen it a few times now. It is amazing. It isn't like an air show. It isn't like anything you've ever seen before. You're seeing a car on a set of tyres going down a runway faster than anything you've ever seen before, and in such an impressive way. And I think it's a huge privilege to work with the guys that have actually put this together and are working on the car today.
And some great onboard images as well that sort of really give you an idea as to just how confined that cockpit is, and when we think about where you're going to be operating this car and looking to try and achieve its maximum performance, a very harsh, a very warm environment, a very cramped cockpit for him. He's going to be in there for quite a period of time. It's not a nice working environment.
So the biggest thing that Andy was worried about was noise. So when we first
Approved to transmit from the about 230 threshold and around 2 echo.
So they've just done a quick walk around check around the car. So basically the engineers on the receive team, what they've done is they've just looked for any damage on the car. They've looked to check that things like the cameras are still in position, that we haven't left any debris on the runway, and now Andy's got clearance to start turning the car around and going back down a similar route to what he's done previously to reline up on the runway.
Oh, so that's quite a quick process then. I thought that might be, you know, a longer process, but already then run number 1 done. He's starting to now think about the second run of the day and gathering that data again.
Yes, yeah, it's very much. It is a very slick process now. You know, we've been here practicing for a couple of weeks, and there were a couple of issues with going around various corners, but we've got a route now that we think Andy can drive through, and we've tested out a few times last week, and I think very easily Andy will be able to get back, and he transits across the threshold of the other runway, down the taxiway, and he crosses back across near the airport terminal.
So everybody says that the EJ200 is a remarkable piece of kit, and he's taking it around towards the bottom section of the runway as we're here ready to head up back through the 30 threshold, down what will be, I think he's now coming back down Echo to Charlie, is he not, where he'll cross across the runway and then go back down to Alpha.
He kind of does a figure of 8 actually. He's kind of, imagine kind of a figure of 8 race circuit, so he's driving fairly slowly around the figure of 8, then he'll line back up on the runway. When this day is just getting better and better, you look at that, the car in the sunshine.
The colours of it, you know, just work. You know, I was never a fan of the colour of Thrust Ssc, the black car. I thought Thrust 2 looked better in gold, but for me, just the pure colour of that car, it works.
And it was kind of an accident. It was kind of, when we very early in the project, we said, well, we needed to have a colour.
You're approved to cross the runway. Echo to proceed to Alpha and hold Alpha 2.
So confirmation that Andy Green is clear to cross Echo to Charlie and then onto the Alpha taxiway. So that's the instruction that will allow him to turn right in a few moments' time and move across the runway. And we can see now on the screen, yep, he's complying with the instruction from Jess Klinsman, who is the run controller up in air traffic control here at Cornwall Airport, Newquay. So over the Echo to Charlie onto the Alpha runway, and that will bring him back down towards the bottom, ready to complete run number 2, Mark, and that's not that far away.
It's not, so we're probably talking about 2-3 minutes till him being ready to actually line up on the runway again. And as we saw last time, once he puts his foot down, then it really does go. You know, we're talking about he's on the power for maybe 5-6 seconds, and then reheated for about 3-4 seconds with the diamonds out the back of it. And I think it will just look stunning as he comes down again.
So what is it that forms those diamonds out the back? I saw them on run 1 when it was on the full reheat. What forms the diamonds?
So what you'll see is that when Andy goes from stationary to actually start to put the power on the nozzle, those petals at the back change their shape, and they're basically controlling the airflow within the engine. So you don't want to have supersonic, so air faster than the speed of sound within the engine. So the nozzle moves to basically to choke the flow, to slow it down. And then as it rushes out the bag, it accelerates hugely, and you'll get these diamonds, which are actually shock waves. They're supersonic shock waves within the exhaust out of the jet engine, and you can see that in the flame with the very bright diamond shapes you see.
And the flame out the back, in terms of the temperatures coming out the back of the car, clearly hotter once you get the rocket motor in there, but just with the EJ200 jet engine.
So the thing I find fascinating about a jet engine, so the flame inside the jet engine.
Line up, runway 12.
So that's Andy just about to line up. So, I mean, the flames inside the jet engine are a higher temperature than the metal that around it can withstand. So actually, they cool all those components. So it's actually about 2,000 degrees centigrade. So it's much hotter than inside a volcano.
So there's actually, despite the fact that there's lots of combustion going on there, there's cooling going on at the same time.
There is cooling, but the cooling air is about 600 degrees centigrade, so it's not cooling as you'd know it.
It's warmer than my oven at home, put it that way. So he's just now heading around the final part of Alpha, lining up onto the bottom of runway 12, and this will be the second ever run of Bloodhound Ssc in front of the public here in the UK at Cornwall Airport, Newquay, down in the very southwestern part of the United Kingdom. And this car, it is a live test run, ladies and gentlemen. This car is being run in front of the public for the very first time. 250-metre turning circle means that Andy has to utilise all of the edge of the runway before he then comes back onto the centre line, part the way up runway 12 here, which gives him projection into a slight southwesterly direction. So we're 120 degrees from north, magnetic north, there or thereabouts. So the car's lining up on the runway. Final confirmation should be coming through from ATC.
Clear tower, clear to roll, wind 2 o'clock, 5 knots.
An absolutely astonishing sight, ladies and gentlemen. The second ever public run of Bloodhound Ssc at Cornwall Airport here in Newquay. And Mark, to me, with my uneducated eye, that looked like another fantastic run.
You can't fault it. I mean, that, I was going to say, it looks quick, it sounds quick. I mean, you can feel it. You can feel the noise. And just to see, the thing that struck me over these last 2 weeks being here is how effortless that car looks. It looks like if you just let it go, it will just keep going and going and going all the way to break a land speed record.
So now the process is that Angie will now sort of sit and let the jets cool down, I assume, for a minute, and then you sort of go through the process of turning all of the systems off.
Yeah, so basically Andy has to drive the car around, so he'll drive it back to pretty much where he started, and then we'll then start doing the cool down process. So Andy will let the jet idle for a bit. We'll do some checks with the engineering team.